Welcome back to Maker Chat Live. Today we have an amazing show for you. We have the one and only Rashaad Santiago. Stick around. How's it going today, Rashaad?
It's going good. How are you?
Doing great. I'm so excited to have you on the show because you are a man of many talents. I titled this one Making Monsters, and I mean that in multiple ways because not only do you design, draw, and create costumes of monsters, but also as a director and writer, you've been able to create these different types of monsters as well. I was just watching your movie that you directed yesterday. It's the Beast of the Water.
Thank you.
You just finished that up. Was that how long were you in production for that?
Well, we started filming in 2016, around the fall, and then we picked up again springtime of 2017, and then I think there were some pickup shots in 2018, and then it was released in January of 2019. So I think altogether, filming was maybe, let's see, one, I want to say total time, maybe about 3 months of film time. But yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, a feature like that is such an undertaking, and I know your background. What kind of launched you on the scene, of course, was being on FaceOff and being the champion and the winner of that. And I'm sure that's opened up so many opportunities for you in different ways that I want to get into as well. But I've been following a lot of your work for a while, and one thing that I'm just so fascinated about what you do is it seems like you're so inspired because you're one of these creators that is also a true fan of monsters and all types of pop culture media like that. What is that where you get most of your inspiration?
Yes. Just growing up, drawing was my outlet as a kid, and I used to draw dinosaurs and dragons and things like that. And that transitioned into Godzilla and King Kong and Creature from the Black Lagoon, and it just kind of grew from there. Just loving the practical element that went into those movies and the artistry that went into those movies. That was something that I wanted to do. I didn't know it was a job or a career when I first started doing it. I just knew that I liked to do it, and I was going to make that work or find out how I can get in, break onto that scene any way that I could.
Yeah. At what point? What was the realization that made you think that that was even possible?
Well, I know that watching the very first time that I can remember watching something and saying that's what I want to do, or those are the kind of things that I want to make, was watching the original black and white 1954 Godzilla movie, and just when they showed him in his suit kind of walking through and destroying, miniature Tokyo, that's when, I think was the initial spark of whatever that is, whatever I'm watching, that's what I got to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just like I said, it ballooned from there, watching all these other characters come to life and seeing all the other movies, like Alien and Predator, and just every time I saw a new movie or every time I saw a new character, it just kind of made it better.
That's so interesting too, because people always ask me if I was inspired by movies like that to get into making things. I do a lot of puppetry, and one other thing I always tell them is, though, like I wasn't really inspired by those movies because I was so fooled by them as a kid. Like when I saw the Muppet characters or Sesame Street characters, like I thought that they were real. I didn't think they were a puppet that I should make. So that's really interesting that you saw this and had the mindset that this is something that you wanted to do. And I know. Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that it started small. I like I said, I didn't really know that it was a job or a career. I just knew that these things looked amazing, and I was going to recreate them any way that I could, whether it was drawing them down or making a painting or something like that. I just knew I needed to create them. I know my mom; she had a few words about the messes I was creating in the house, trying to recreate these things that I saw on TV and movies and things like that. And I don't think she knew what I was trying or aspiring to be, but uh, she kind of helped. She would get me little materials and things to help create these monsters and things that I wanted.
That's awesome too, and I like that you were mentioning Godzilla before because that was one of the first projects that I started following of yours, and you did this Godzilla costume. I have some photos here of it being propped up. There's nobody inside it. I figured
No.
here, but one thing that's amazing about this costume to me is that this was completely fabricated. Typically, when you see this type of creature, especially like on being on FaceOff, a lot of it is sculpted and then making of a mold and then casted. When do you decide when you're going to fabricate versus mold making and sculpting?
Well, that's a good question, and that's something that comes across a lot in the industry when you're speaking with producers and directors and trying to decide what's the best route for a character. And I think ultimately it comes down to this. I think the size and the budget. As you can imagine, Godzilla is a massive character in real life and in on when you're putting it on a person. It has to be something that somebody can get into, and when you're using an actor who's about 6 foot, that's a pretty big suit in itself. So fabricating the suit was the best option rather than life casting a suit actor and then sculpting as big as Godzilla is suit wise, and then molding it and then running that into material. Fabricating is just it's I think easier as far as like build up. You can get to that size a lot faster when you're fabricating than if I was sculpting it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But again, particularly with your work, is with fabrication, is even in these relatively close up photos here, like it doesn't look like most fabrications I see. It really has that sculptural element of it, and even looking at some of these other process photos, so people can see that is raw foam that
Yep.
you've used all sorts of different techniques to get those textures. Do you mind walking us through a couple of those techniques that you use to achieve that?
Well, no problem. When we first started, the Godzilla we used for Heritage was going to have the traditional Godzilla skin, which is like that black charcoal lava rock esque texture. But then that was switched later on to resemble that more of a crocodile. And what I did was the skin is actually that was all those pieces were actually sculpted by hand. What I did was sculpted a flat piece of skin and then molded that and then just kind of did a bunch of latex pulls that I glued onto the outside of the actual suit.
Oh, that's cool. Almost like shingles or something, right? On a house, kind of stacking them up.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. But I think also my guess is, without seeing this in person up close, that another thing that really helps sell that is your paint job. Could you mind? What is your theory on that? Because I know even from watching Face Off for years that they say that not that this is a bad sculpt, but they say that like a paint job can save a bad sculpt, but not really the other way around. Do you ever use painting techniques to create forms in this type of thing, or in any way like that?
Yeah. Well, with here, I've got a little 3D print. There you go. Of Godzilla, the one from Heritage, and as you can see, he's got the crocodile pattern. And one way that I do any kind of reptile, that's where a lot of my inspiration comes from. If you could, I don't know if you can see behind me there, there's two raptors over my shoulder here. It's a matter of bringing out the depth in a sculpt or a shape. So with scales like crocodiles have, I like to go into the recesses of the sculpt or the texture with a darker color, and then use a lot of highlights and dry brushing to make the uh, rise forms pop more. And you could reverse that if you want to kind of break it up and add, some contrast throughout. But it's just like I said, it's just a matter of the painting and how you do that. Sometimes you can save a piece when you're molding a piece, and sometimes it doesn't come out the way you want it to. Sometimes it'll have like an area of it that's messed up, and you can try and patch it the best way you can. But I find that at times it's a lot easier to do the best patch job you can and then just fix it with paint, because all you have to do, like I said, was the contrast of highlights and shadows.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting too. Yeah, that's one thing I remember seeing on the show all the time too, is them always having to fix those seam lines. And it
Mhm.
almost made me wonder to a point, is like sometimes there had to be so much fixing, it almost seemed like there wasn't that much time saved in the rest of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Well, just to go back to the painting again for a second, I found this photo in going through your some of your photos here, and I thought it was just a beautiful color scheme there, and it made me start thinking about and looking even closely at that. You know, you have the blues and the purples, but all that speckling going around within it. Now, how do you discover what kind of colors to play with for different characters? And I mean, because there's a lot more there than the average passerby might see.
Well, a lot of my inspiration, as I've mentioned before, it comes from the ocean. I love the colorations on fish and eels and squids, and it's just beautiful. And that's where I pull a lot of my inspiration from. And sometimes you'll see something that the colors of whatever creature it is just pop. Like that particular picture was for my. I'll. Do I have like a second to run and grab it?
Yeah, yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll run and grab it.
Yeah, and while he's running to grab that quick, I'm going to bring up just some of his other pictures that we're going to be talking about soon. He's this is a Predator helmet he's worked on, as well as, oh, he's back. Here we go.
Yeah. So that
Mm.
paint job that you've seen was for this guy, which, like I said, as you can tell, just this is straight out of, looked like he walked straight off of a Pirates of the Caribbean set. Uh, but yeah, it was for him, and that was just kind of like the base that I wanted. I wanted to do a lot of the blues and the purples, and just kind of like a character that would pop when you saw it. A lot of times, it was for a show that we were doing down in Nashville, and I knew that some of the other contestants were going to be doing like either like a vampire or something bloody or something like that. And I like to stand out with the things that I do. And I knew that my makeup versus what they were going to do, this was going to pop a lot more on camera. And when you saw it, more than it would have if I was doing like a muted character that had like a lot of browns and grays and things in it.
Mm. Yeah, I think, again, from when I hear people talk about, like, that's something that can really make you not only stand out, like you say, but it's actually more challenging, because I hear what's a stigma that I sometimes hear special effect people say, is that you can kind of hide a lot in gory makeup. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if you start throwing blood on it. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's not too much you can hide in that. What was that piece for?
It was for oh no, it wasn't. It was for TPAC. The what is that? It's right there at the tip of my tongue. TPAC, NECAT Network, for a show down in Nashville. And they brought us down twice to be able to just do the makeup that we would do on the show. Each time was three contestants, and it wasn't a competition. It was just showing people how we did makeup in the live, so they can watch it rather than watching it on TV. They got to see us do it live, and that was my character.
Yeah.
I could have done something simple, but this guy was kind of a redo for me. As I had mentioned before, I on the show of Face Off, I got to do this octopus character. I believe it was like the 6th or 7th challenge. It was a mutant challenge, and it was this octopus character that I really wanted to put a little bit more time into and a little bit more character into, but I didn't really get a chance to. I kind of got a chance to use those colors. He was kind of like a cobalt blue with these are bright orange contrast spots, but I didn't really get a chance to put everything into it. So Mr. Lobsterhead here was kind of like my do-over of that, and to be able to put my whole creativity into one character.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Now with that kind of a character, did you do a sketch of it first?
I did, but my initial sketch that I did was based off of the octopus character. It had the bulbous head, and then it had tentacles coming down the shoulders. And I think I changed that up. I don't want to say last minute, but I changed it up before the show because I love crustacean characters. I love like lobsters and crabs and the way their bodies are and the colorations that they have. And that one is actually based off of I want to say North. It's a rock lobster from Australia. I can't remember which region, but it's got like blue. It's got blues and beige and orange. It's got so many colors in it. And as soon as I saw that picture, I was like, that's the one.
Yeah, yeah, because it's one thing I'm always curious about with some people's process when they do this type of work, whether they usually start from a sketch. Because I know you do have the ability to sketch, and I'm sure that sometimes that is part of your design process. This was one of your sketches that I came across looking through your profile. Is that your preferred way to design a character, is to sketch it first, or do you like to just kind of play with the clay?
Well, most of the time it starts with a sketch. The character will start out in your head and then it goes down on paper. But what starts out on paper doesn't always translate into the clay. Or sometimes I'll come up with different ideas as I'm sculpting, and then it'll evolve from the sketch to the actual sculpture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you ever personally just play with the clay then to play with shapes, or do you always start with some sort of a sketch first?
I want to say the percentage, it's probably higher that it starts out as a sketch first.
Yeah.
Most of the time I'm working with producers and directors who have an idea, but they can't really get it out of their head and put it down on paper.
Yeah.
So they'll tell me what their idea is, and I'll usually go into sketching before I even touch clay, because that way I'm not wasting any time. I can see exactly what they want, and then I can go from there. I've done going straight to the clay before when it has something to do with like a vampire or a werewolf or something simple like that we know already. I don't have to sketch that out. But when it's something a little bit more intricate, that goes down on paper first.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially when you're working with clients. You have to do sketches first. They have to know what you're going to be investing your time into. I guess the only reason I really ask is, again, thinking about kind of my process, because me personally, I sometimes find the paper drawing a sketch first being a little bit limiting to being in 2D.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm just inspired by the shape that I start getting out of like clay or foam. So that's really interesting. Yeah, I like that. But you can in another one of your projects that I was following a couple years ago was that gremlin that you created. Where you sculpted the head and cast the head, and then you fabricated the rest of it. And I thought that was so cool. That was for a Halloween costume. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. Initially, it was for my Halloween costume, but then after making that, we had so much fun playing around with it. And, there hasn't been a Gremlin movie since the 90s, I believe. Tim, when did that one come out? 91. And, it's a movie that me and my buddies always talk about and, go back and rewatch. And we just, after creating the puppet, I wanted to go back and, thank you, Seth. I wanted to go back and here he is. He's still.
Oh my God, you still got him knocking around, huh? That's awesome.
Yeah, he's still knocking around, and there's that guy, the little Mogwai, Gizmo. But yeah, he started out as just a Halloween costume, and then we wanted to make a film. Unfortunately, we didn't get the attention. We didn't get the how do you say that? Promotional backing, and we didn't get the financial backing to be able to do the short. But that's something, that's still on the back burner. And if we ever have the funds to do it, we'll definitely tackle that short, because it was a cool concept. It was short. We were going to introduce new gremlins, like they did with prior films, and it was going to be a fun little thing that we did here in the town that we are in.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, I know people love those movies, and I know I've seen it. I think it's been in development for years. There's somebody making some documentary about the making of it. I've seen that before, and I hope that comes to fruition one day too. Because again, the work you did on this is remarkable. I'm putting up a couple photos for people to see. Again, looking at the body compared to the head, again, you really, I feel I look at this and think the whole thing would be casted. It's amazing how you've been able to get the transition of the fabricated parts to the sculpted parts to be so seamless. It really is remarkable. I have this still here from one of your live streams when you were doing that. It looked like you were using a soldering iron.
Yes, sir.
Carve out a lot of those shapes. That's
Yeah.
and even in the engineering on it, because it was like a third arm gag that you had. I pulled some of the videos here. Let's see if we can get that going.
So that's how it works. And for extreme gestures, I mean, this can move all around, but I think this is the spot where it's going to look the best.
Yeah, and I highly recommend people follow. We have all of his social medias scrolling at the bottom, because a lot of these kinds of updates you do are the things that I think most people are most fascinated. Of course, they love those finished pictures of it being done, but watching in that moment, even in that clip, watching how your mind works about how you're able to get that sympathetic movement of the arm by attaching the hands to your neck, and then by moving the rest of your arm, it makes it look like he's really using his arms, which really sells the illusion. I have the finished version of that here as well for people. Yeah, that just looks so cool. So yeah, what was your inspiration to make it like that?
Well, in the second film, if you watch it, when Clamp is being attacked in his office area, that's one of the gags that they used. It's really quick, it's really subtle, but if you watch that clip of him being attacked, you can see that it's one of those gags where he's actually controlling the puppet.
Yeah, that's so cool. I believe too that, like, for some scenes when people were running around the streets, I think they did a similar thing as well. It's a common thing for anyone who has a theatrical background. Little horrors. Seymour does that for that one number that, as far as I'm concerned, shouldn't be part of the show. Breaks the whole illusion of the character. but anyway, it's a fun theater gag that people like with that. But again, we showed some of your Godzilla stuff, your Gremlin stuff, and again, kind of going back to that theme of yours of just I see some that are, and I know you do a lot of your own original work, but you also do so much of this work of fandom. Where does that? What keeps you driving to do that?
Just the pure respect that I have for the craft, and seeing the artwork and the artistry that they put into. I mean, I watched so much behind the scene features on all these movies, and just seeing the artistry that went into and wanting to be a part of that and being, able to recreate these things myself is just like being a kid. It's just like watching it for the first time, sculpting it and starting the idea and bringing it to a completed project is always. I'm fascinated by the things that I create. Just being able to Velociraptor, as you can see, the Predator on this side, just things that I grew up watching, and just to be able to recreate those things, it's a special. Any artist can tell you that it's something that it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, and like I say, you're absolutely remarkable at it. Here's some more close-ups of that Predator that's in process, and I have this one as well. People, look at that. It is absolutely remarkable.
Thank you. Just even though it's not for any kind of special film or anything like that, just being able to put my hands and touch something that I grew up watching, it's just, like I said, it's just a feeling that you can't describe.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, just to pop back to it, when you were talking about trying to make that Gremlins film, is there any restrictions or rights you have to get to be able to do that as a fan film?
Yes, as long, depending on the product and the owners, most of the time, if you have the disclaimer that it is a fan film, it's not for any kind of financial gain, and you're just doing it out of pure love for the content, you tend to be okay. Something that we ran into for Godzilla Heritage was the fact that I think a lot of the fans and a lot of, I guess people, say that again? Yeah, newcomers were posting it as if it was a new film, like like professional Hollywood thing that's coming out, and oh, look at this new film that Toho's making, or whatever the case may be. And that kind of got back to Toho, and they, that's when they sent the cease and desist, because they felt like it was confusing the fans, or fans couldn't tell the difference. They thought it was something real. And that's where, the trouble comes from. But we had all the disclaimers, we had all this is purely fan fiction, and it's not, we're not licensed to make this, and we had all that stuff. But sometimes you run into those errors.
Yeah, and that's a shame to run into it at that point of the project, I imagine, too, where you had some bunch of stuff invested. Was it able to come to fruition at all with that?
Yes, it's actually for those who backed the project. They got the link, the 5-minute. 25. Yeah, it's a 25-minute short, which was one of the stipulations that the Toho gave us, that it couldn't be a full length feature. It had to be a short, and they couldn't post it social, like publicly. It had to be password protected. Only the people who donated could view it. So unfortunately, it's out there, but it's not for public viewing.
Oh, I see. Yeah. That's too bad. Well, hopefully one day that'll be able to be available in the public in some way for people to admire your work. But again, I was looking through more of your, again, there's just an endless supply of remarkable things to look at on your Instagram and many of your other social media platforms. But this is obviously a very popular type of character that everyone's making right now in a lot of ways, is this baby Yoda. Is this the clay version right here?
That is the clay version right there. That's when I had to, oh no, he was still at the shop at that point, because I can see the T-Rex behind him. He I think at this point I was still kind of refining like his body and trying to find the perfect balance of wrinkles in his face, because by this point they didn't really have too many photos or clear shots of him from any particular angle. So I was basically working on what I could see and what I had. So this
yeah. Early on, there wasn't too much to go off, and it is such an unusual design. It being a baby, is such a young character, but still having the gray hair and so many wrinkles and whatnot. Though there is a difference from the traditional one.
Yeah. So it was making, whoever took on that task, they did a really good job, because they took all the elements that made Yoda and just youngified him, which was the challenge that I was finding, and making him look like Yoda, but also making him look like a baby version of that.
Yeah, and not just a baby version, because I saw another version on your Instagram, which again speaks to your fandom of this. This is a Darth Maul baby Yoda. Do I have that right?
Yep. Darth Moda.
Darth Moda.
Darth Moda.
That's great. That's good. What even gave you the idea to do that?
It was purely just for fun. I have the mold for the baby Yoda, and since it's not technically Yoda, I got the idea. I was like, well, why not do other versions? What if there's a Sith version, or a Darth version? And that's what spawned the idea for Darth Moda. I figured just paint some red latex in the mold and do the tattooing, and there you go. I can do yellow ones. I can do blue ones. The possibilities are endless.
That's right. That's right. How many times are you able to reuse that mold?
Well, since I made it the way that I made it, it's just a resin mold. I could, as long as I take care of the mold, I can keep running them forever.
Oh wow, really? Yeah, no, I thought I know some molds kind of have a life of so many pulls, which is something I learned the hard way one time. That's how a lot of this maker culture goes. You're kind of learning as you go.
Yeah, when your molds are made out of stone, like this face hugger one. There's only so many pulls that I'm going to be able to get out of this one because it is out of a material that's brittle, and eventually it'll start to chip and it'll start to break and it'll start, all the other jazz. So when you spend a little bit more money to get the good stuff to do, like the resin and the fiberglass molds, those tend to last a lot longer because they're just a more durable material.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that face hugger that you just showed us, isn't that actually a mask that you designed for the for what's happening right now in the world? I have a close up here on a mannequin head for people to see.
This is the mask, and it was on my docket for things or potential masks to do for this whole pandemic, and then people just started tagging me in like either comments or just saying, hey, you should hop on doing a face hugger, or all this different things after doing the Cthulhu version. And there's a couple of other ones that I want to do and get around to doing, but it was.
Yeah, I saw this one here, which was really interesting, and I believe this one too was the process to that one. That's the clay version, right?
Yeah, that's before it got molded.
What are these casted in?
They're just latex. I've got one right here. They're just latex and flex foam, basically. They're super simple. And then I just put some really good straps on this. Because when I did the first one, it was kind of just really quick to put it out there and promote it. But for the people who have purchased, they've got some really good straps on here. And it's just, like I said, latex, flex foam. It's as you can see, I'm balling it up and it'll go back to its original shape. I could have done them out of resin, but that just takes a little bit more. I figure with the latex and the flex foam, even though it's sculpted to one size, at least this way it has room for flex. And where the resin one would be a little too rigid, and if it was too tight or something like that, it would cause just uncomfortability with wearing it. And the latex and the flex foam, a lot cheaper and a much faster process for getting these ran and have people.
Like you said, it'd be a lot more comfortable, and especially with something like that where people wear them for much prolonged periods of time. Now, I've even had in my shop masks that are kind of stiff, and they are super uncomfortable. And you take them out, you have these marks around your face. There's nothing flattering about them at all.
So that's why I went with the latex and the flex foam.
Yeah. So are these are something that are available for people to purchase?
Yes, they are. They are up on my Etsy. It's RS Studio Creations, I believe it is. RS Studio Creations on Etsy.
Oh, that's great. No, I didn't realize you had an Etsy. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes for people to click on. Are there other types of things you have there for people as well?
Yeah, I've got the Predator bust is there, the Bale helmet, I believe Joker's there, Batman's there, Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Guyver, and a couple of other busts and things that I have available.
Did you do any busts or maquettes of characters that you did on FaceOff that people may have become fans of to make available? I hear that's something that some people do.
I think that's okay to do now, but when you're still when I was still under contract from the show, we weren't able to, because then a percentage of that is supposed to go to Syfy.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because they own the copyright for that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Hey
Huh.
Tim, do you message Garain and let her know that I'm on? She just tried to call me.
Yeah, I think your audio cut out for a second there.
Hold on, I'm gonna get that.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Oh yeah, that's much better.
Also,
Perfect.
Yeah,
because especially because one thing I've heard of is people who've been on Face Off or shows similar to that. Not only do they like to do that if they're allowed to have something available for people who love those characters, but also to do some more refining. Because even though to the lay audience, it's remarkably impressive everything you guys did on that show. But I know as the artists, they always, I mean, the one thing you hear every single episode is that they wish they had more time.
Yep.
There's a lot of restrictions. And for that reason, there's certain corners you have to cut. And I'm sure it would have been exciting to redo or refine some of those designs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's, like you said, that's something that's said all the time is, you only have that small window, which in the real world you have that as well. But your time for creating and producing these pieces is way more than what we got on the show. So if we had just half as much time as we do in real life for creating these characters, the result would have been much better for what we're putting out. Unfortunately, though, a lot of producers and directors think that that's the way it works in real life, is to be able to create these characters in the amount of time that we did on the show. And sometimes you have to tell them, like, the only reason why you saw what you saw, we got the finished result, is because we had everything up front, and everything was, the time it takes to actually create something for a film takes a lot longer than just 3 days.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine the emails you got for the next couple of years of people. Hey, I've got this idea for a film, and I've got $300. What can you do? Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
Hey, I'm gonna, because you're coming through my earpiece on my phone. So I'm gonna back out and rejoin real quick.
Sure. Okay? I'll put up some pictures for people to look at. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want I want to be able to hear you better.
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah. So we're going to be bringing Rashaad back in just a moment. We'll click him back in. But again, just to go over these photos, I really want you guys to take a close look at the detail. Because again, there's so many different layers to this. First of all, there's so much detail in the sculpt itself. And like we were talking about before, it can add so much with a paint job like that, which is, again, like we established, something else he's definitely an expert in. But so Rashaad's back now. One of the other things I just wanted to talk about is how can I put this? Actually, before we get into that, do you have anything you're working on now?
Want them to know? Yes. If they would like to see more of this awesome stuff, we are actually working on a short film right now that is stylized in the 1950s era of monster movie making. And it's live on Kickstarter right now. So if anybody wants to go, and if you can donate, please donate. And if not, just share. Spread the word. Let people know that we're making this, and you will not be disappointed, I promise.
Yeah, and are you sharing a lot of this process too?
Yes. It's on my Instagram. We've got some short clips of the stop motion that I just did not too long ago, as well as, thank you, sir, as well as this puppet that I made for the close-up shots, which is just latex and flex foam, sculpted, molded, and then, like, again, ran in latex and flex foam. And then these are some of the stop motion dinosaurs that I made. Hopefully these are coming through clear there.
Yeah.
Can I show them the set? Yeah. Let me.
Ooh, we get A sneak peek of the set. I like.
This is a sneak peek of the little miniature set.
Oh, okay. I saw you working on it. I did see some of this. Okay, I didn't realize the name of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really cool.
it's on a 4x4 piece of wood that I built in the on this table that I had. And then there's a background that's painted on the wall. And then I just had this light here that was overhead, shining down to make it look like sunlight. And then I filmed it literally right here. The comments of people thought the set was a lot bigger. They thought the puppets were a lot bigger, but as you can see, this is how big they were.
Wow.
I was told that when you're making dinosaurs, or just to get the best motion out of these pieces, that the puppets need to be at least 12 inches or bigger. But I was like, who makes these rules?
Yeah, that's right.
So I just made them this big. This is a little Spinosaur, and they got little metal skeletons in them that I made, so he can literally stay any way that I want him to.
It's meant to look authentic 1950s.
Yeah, and I based them off of like the classic, like the old retro photos of what they thought dinosaurs looked like back then.
And now, are you personally doing the animation on this?
Yes, I was outsourcing to see if I could find somebody to do it. And I'm actually very glad that I didn't, because I had a blast doing this, just making the little set and making little dinosaurs. It did kill my back. I was in pain for like 2 days afterward, just from the snapping and back and forth. I didn't take into consideration how strenuous that would be on my body, especially with most of the time when they make these sets, they're raised a lot higher. But as you can see, with me standing next to this one, it's at waist level. So I had to do a lot of bending to get to the areas.
And you had it on a dolly too.
And I had to do a dolly shot. And if they want, that stuff is on my Instagram. The shot of the stop motion shot is on my Instagram. So if they want to go, it's like, there you go. It's on my Instagram, so if they want to go and check it out, you can do that. It's also on the Kickstarter page, as well as us testing a type of plaster, or which type of plaster we're going to use for the miniature building explosions and collapses.
That's awesome too. Yeah, and we just got the kind of mini tour. So this is your workshop that you're in now. Is that attached to where you live, or is this a separate place from where you live?
This is a separate place from where I live. It's in this massive warehouse-esque building that was an incubator at one point, back in like the 60s or 50s, I believe. Huh? Business incubator. And yeah, I've been here for 3 years. I had a smaller space when I first started, and then a couple of months in, I moved in March, and then by October, I was already ready for a larger space.
Yeah.
So the display, yeah, we'll give you guys a tour of the display once we get to, I guess, closing out. We'll do
once you wrap up, which we'll probably do in about 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
So, yeah, just out of curiosity on that, do you like having a separate workspace from your home? Because right now, we are in my studio as well. It's where I do everything that I create, and it is attached to my home. And I personally, I love that, and I would have it no other way. But yeah, what is your opinion on that?
Well, when I first started, the space I was working out was right in the corner of my living room. And it was fun because I didn't really have to travel far. There was, no gas, none of that have to worry about. But it was hard to separate home from work at times, with the kids in the background, or just hearing what's going on in the house. Kind of, sometimes it would detract from my creativity. But being able to come to a place that's completely separate from my house, and just to be able to be surrounded 100% by the art and the craft makes it just, it's 100% better for me.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. Because again, for me personally, one thing I love about doing it is having it in my house. Is that when that inspiration strikes, you can just take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But that then again, that can take over your life, like you're saying. It can become a distraction, and it's probably something that a lot of people can relate to now. Because even if you are a business person and working from home now, it's hard to stop answering your emails after 5 o'clock because
Mhm.
your workspace is now the same as your living space, which like I
Mhm.
said, it's something that a lot of people are being challenged by right now. But another
Yep.
quick topic that I wanted to cover quickly, just because it's always a tough topic, but I like to bring it up because so many makers tackle this in different way, and that's pricing.
Mhm.
Feel like the more perspectives we can get from different people on how to make some money back or even make a living on what you are making, the better. So can you walk us through how I know there's probably a wide spectrum depending on the scale of the project and what you're building, but do you have
Mhm.
that kind of formula that you kind of generally use for pricing whatever you're working on?
Well, now it's evolved from when I first started. When I first started, I didn't know what to charge people, and I kind of felt bad for people a lot of times in the beginning, and I would take a lot of hits in my pocket to just be able to give somebody or make something for somebody else. Now it's just based off of time put into it and material. Those are the top two that go into any pricing. And when you work enough in this industry, you have a lot of jobs to compare to. So a lot of the jobs just kind of fall into a bracket of things that I've done before, and I just kind of cross reference and say, hey, this is something you need a creature suit. Well, I did this creature suit for this amount of money. If you can get anywhere close to here, then I can do that job.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about even for like, I think the hardest thing is to start that conversation because I imagine that a lot of people that come to you have no idea what to expect, whether we're
Mhm.
talking hundreds,
Mhm.
thousands, or tens of thousands. I
Mhm.
think a lot of people just end up being surprised once they start hearing numbers.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. Whether they're a fan or whether they're a collector, or the area where there's the less surprise people and the people who know more of what they're talking about are in the industry. Are people who are doing music videos or television or film. They know that it's going to be pricey or they know it's going to be expensive. They just have a budget. Okay, we only have 5,000 for this project. Would you be able to do it? Or we only have 2,000 for this project. Will you be able to do it? And those are the areas where it just flows more easily when you're dealing with, like I said, with the collectors and fans who just want something that you've made. It's something that they
Mm.
love. You find a lot of times that you're saying a price, and that's what I do right off the bat now. Sometimes I get into like a conversation with a fan or a collector and it's going for like 10, 15 minutes, and then the price comes out and then they're like, oh, sorry, that's a little bit out of my price range. So now right off the bat, when somebody asks me a question, I just drop the price on them and say, hey, listen, just so you know, something of this caliber is going to cost you about or run you back about this much. And that usually either ends the conversation really quickly
Mm.
or they're like, yeah, I figured it'd be that much. And then we can go from there.
Yeah, yeah, and I bet there's a big difference between the pricing of something like that, a prop collection thing for a fan versus having something custom designed and created for a creature show. Whereas
Mhm.
if you're making someone, let's say a helmet of some sort that you have a mold for, and you just have to do the casting and paint work, you know kind of exactly what to
Yeah.
charge, right?
Mhm.
Whereas someone again wants an original design, but
Mhm.
it's still discovering what that design is going to be, and again too, even within that, there's such a spectrum of different processes you could use to do it. Like even I heard you talking about it when you were creating that gremlin puppet that you made. That one you fabricated the body, but if you were to make them for a fan or for to have available for other people, that you would sculpt it and cast it so that you could kind of not mass produce it, but do a run.
Yeah. And a lot of times, whoever you're dealing with, they don't have a point of reference. They don't understand how much goes into it or into the material. So they're just thinking, a lot of times when they buy something off the shelf, that's mass produced, it's coming off a conveyor belt, whatever. There's thousands of them. So they're only sold for a certain amount. When you have to make something by hand, meaning that you have to purchase the materials, make the armature, sculpt it, mold it, cast it, paint it, seal it, finish it, put it in a box and send it, that's when people start to get the idea of, oh, okay, that some people already understand that off the bat, where they're like, oh, okay, I know how much work goes into this, or I know how much work you're putting into this. But most people don't. Most people are just thinking you're grabbing this off of a shelf and you have a plethora of them. So
half of, I feel like, what we do is educating the client. Right. They have no idea. They have no idea. Yeah, that's so funny. Now, do you now has being on the FaceOff and given you a little bit more of a platform than you otherwise would have, do you think that has helped or hurt you in that sometimes? Because sometimes what I kind of hear people say is people don't go to those people because they just assume they can't afford it, or I'm sorry, that's not really framed as a question. But do you have a response to that? Has it people feel like they're outpriced because of your accomplishment there, or not?
No, it's for this. I want to say 6 years that I've been doing this since FaceOff. It's all learning, the process. So in the beginning, I just wanted to make huge things and to be able to sell huge things at like tens of thousands of dollars, like they do in the movie industry. But it's very rare that those jobs come across. So over the years, I've started making my creations smaller and more affordable, because then that's the way I go in between big jobs. So where, if I was doing a creature suit for like anywhere from 5 to 15K, that's going to hold me for a little bit. And then in between not having those kind of big jobs, I have selling things like the baby Yodas or the face mask or things like that. So being on the show has brought a lot of attention, and still to this day, I get people from other countries who are just seeing the show now, who are messaging me and reaching out and wanting to own something that I've created. So FaceOff was definitely a platform to move forward.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say on that too, and I'm not saying this just because I'm talking to you, but I was a huge fan of FaceOff, and I've watched all the seasons. And even before we connected a couple years ago, you were one of my favorite contestant, because not only from a design standpoint and all your work, but even just on camera, you had so much charisma and such a personality. And actually, I don't know this. Are you a performer? Do you consider yourself a performer?
No, I mean, I do it for fun, and I would love to. If somebody was like, hey, I want to put you in this movie, I would love to, do that. And I've considered doing voice acting as well. So, I mean, yes. I mean, I don't really consider myself a performer. I mean, even though I am one.
Yeah. I was going to say, again, over the years, I've seen so many videos of you either doing impressions that were amazing, and even just like these funny little skits that you do. And actually, I have one here that I'll let people watch quick.
Junior, put your seatbelt on.
No.
Boy, put your seatbelt on.
No, I'm not putting it on. I don't like it. God.
Boy, I'm a
Just so, like, those kind of funny little things. Again, you look at something, you're like, oh, you see stuff like that on Instagram or on TikTok all the time, but you're not even doing it with those apps. You're just doing it completely on your own. What inspires you to do that kind of stuff?
Just an idea will pop into my head, and I'm like, hey, it'd be cool or funny. If it makes me laugh, then I'm doing it. Like, if that's just how my brain works. And if I think something's funny, then I'm gonna either try to record it any way that I can, and then post it.
I think that's so true to all of your work, based on everything that I've seen of you, that you only do things that you really enjoy and love. And actually, this question just coming to me based on watching that. There was a face filter to make you look older and a face filter to make you look younger. Do you think that kind of stuff is going to affect the future of what you do in movies and special effects?
That's a question that's always tossed around in the industry, and we get asked all the time: is do we ever feel like we're ever going to go out of work because of technology and the way it's going? And it's happened. There's times when work, is you get either paid to do something or you get contracted to do something, and then you do that work, and then that work is covered by computer generated imagery. So I mean, the way I look at it is, as long as there is a call and a demand for practical effects and for makeup and creatures and things like that, I don't think we'll ever go out of business, because there's always that director or that producer who is like me, and they love the practicality and the physical, being able to see something physical on screen with the actors. That call is always going to come through. I'm always going to get that phone call or that email of somebody. And the more we post and the more we stick together as a community and do things like this, where we're helping each other out and just giving tips and tricks and things like that, I don't think there'll ever be an end to practical effects.
Yeah, I had the exact same opinion too, for the longest time. But I wonder, I have been double thinking it a little bit, only because of what's going on now. And I was actually reading a blog post yesterday that's saying that essentially, like, we're going to be seeing a lot of animation over the next year because actors and movies cannot be made in the same way with what's going on. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, no, because I'm with you, especially it was so rewarding to see a lot of what you're talking about in some recent movies, especially like the newer Star Wars movies, regardless of what people think of them. There was a lot more practical effects than has been in recent times with the Star Wars franchise. But yeah, I definitely hope so, because it's going to make so much more opportunities for artists like us. And as well as, again, like you're saying, I think it just resonates with the audience better.
And I think it's up to us as, like I said, a community, as artists, knowing that we're going through this time of, quarantine and not being able to, for a lot of productions to be shut down and not to be able to see those physical elements, and for a lot of things to be going toward animation and CG because you can do that from home. It's up to us as artists to be able to keep those kind of art forms alive. And like I'm doing with the stop motion and with the puppets and things like that, just showing people that the art form is not dead. I don't think it'll ever die. And we have to keep it alive, whether we're doing makeup on ourselves or doing, the kind of work that you do with the puppets, doing little shows and videos and things like that, and showing people like, hey, this stuff is still going on even in this time of hardship.
No, yeah, absolutely. This is not stopping my puppet making by any means. It may slow it down a little bit just because a lot more time focused on family, but definitely keeping it going. But yeah, before we wrap up, did you want to give us a little tour of your shop? Take a look around, show some stuff off. It's one of my favorite things as a maker is to see other people's maker spaces.
So this is welcome to the display room. This is where all of my pieces that I've done over the years are. So that's the Black Panther. That is the Black Panther. This is Ultron. I've got a better one over there. This little creature bust I've done. The Guyver, of course, because he's like one of the best. Of course, you got my fabricated graboid up there, which is held together for a really long time, like just really good. This is my first Predator bust that I did, which was an original concept crustacean king. Of course, the Clever Girl, the full torso with the arms, as you can see in comparison with my body.
Yeah, can you turn that on?
We've got lights. See here?
Yeah, bring it over here.
So there we go. This side. So she's a little rough because she was the very first raptor that we ran, and she's just been through the ringer. Eventually, I want to have a full Velociraptor. I love this theatrical lighting. Eventually, I want to have a full raptor for display as well as a creature suit for taking to different shows and cons and things when that starts back up. But the way they did for the original Jurassic Park. So you won't see my legs. My legs will be in her legs, and it'll be very painful. We've got another Velociraptor bust here from the second film. From the second film, the male, the orange version, as well as Mr. Spock. I did that when he passed away. That was kind of like my tribute to the character. My Alien 3 bust, I guess. Half bust, if you want to call it that. My restricted area sign. Captain Quint and the Orca. This is my first human bust that I did. Captain Quint. From Jaws. From Jaws, for those of you who are familiar with the character. We've already seen the Gremlin. This was a helmet that I did for a Batman short for the Red Hood. Completely original design. Predator costume that I did for my buddy. You guys probably seen that on my Instagram. The head is missing, but this is the suit. Some other characters here. This was a bat for the Batman short that I did. Helped a friend with. This was supposed to be the original design for Killer Bat or whatever his name is. Or whatever his name is. That's the painted Ultron-y. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah. And then that was a little Godzilla bust I did, maquette for the 2014 release. Then let's step around to here, the front. That is my Creature from the Black Lagoon bust. As you can see, that was my original paint job.
Tell them what it's based on.
A largemouth bass, which is my favorite fish in the whole world. It's got a little dust.
That's awesome.
It gets a little dusty in here. And then, of course, the Go Enuati from Beast of the Water. My first feature.
Yeah.
Go watch it now. Dark Knight Joker. King Kong puppet. You guys can see that. And then this is one of the Godzilla heads from Heritage. Godzilla Heritage. I've got an albino alligator here on the floor. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then I've got a tegu here on the floor. It's not real, I promise. I've got a puppet head. It's a lion, random lion puppet head. And then a pigeon, an animatronic pigeon, actually. It flaps its wings and all that jazz. Not going to tell you what for because it's disturbing. But when they tell you to make something, you just make it.
Yeah, for sure.
Here is a random viper head that I made. I was doing a series of pieces that I was going to show to different museums and things like that because I was interested in doing museum work, just character pieces. This is a buddy of mine's, Michael Empinet. He's the one that did my poster for my Terror from Beyond Beyond. He did a short film entitled Clever Girl, where they reverse engineered an African gray parrot and got like this dinosaur-esque bird thing. So this was like the head sculpt on that. It's pretty cool. Had teeth and everything. Was pretty cool. Nightmare Batman from Nightmare, which is on YouTube. You can watch it right now. Bruce Wayne has to fight the Nightmare Batman in one of his visions. It was really cool. This is my Christian Bale Batman bust that I did. A lot of fun. It was for my cousin, actually. Her husband wanted a Christian Bale bust and a Joker. This was a Mako shark. He don't got no teeth. He's just up for display. Chamberlain, one of the mystics from the Dark Crystal. And Yuadi again in all his glory.
That's awesome.
It's one of my favorite shots. This is my She-Beast practical werecat thing. You know, her mouth opens and all that jazz. She deadly. This was the first werewolf that I got to make for the music video, Ghosted, Get Some by Ghosted. It's on YouTube right now. You can watch it. Great song. It's a great song. They only had $2K for the budget, and I made a full head-to-toe werewolf for them.
Oh my God.
In 10 days, probably less. Predator, another bust from Godzilla Heritage, and then my Hulk bust, which I did like 4 years ago, and he's still kind of just sitting there.
Seen better days.
He's seen better days. Captain Kirk, Deadpool, and then this is the Demogorgon copy of the Demogorgon that we use for the Comic-Con that we went to. It's just a foam copy of the body, head, the feet are over there. It's got one hand. A lot of the stuff in here is just like positioning, and when it's finally finished, it'll be finished. These are some pictures we took with the actual finished suit. This is Mark Steger. He played the actual Demogorgon in Stranger Things. This is me and Rick Prince. He's the one that one of the ones that helped us make the actual Demogorgon. And then this is Noah Snap, I believe, from the show, and one of the moms from the show. I cannot remember her name, but she was pretty cool. So that's my display room. You can check it out in all its glory.
Yeah, that's remarkable, man. That is so cool.
Thank you. And then my shop is a wreck because, you know, like most shops.
It's supposed to be.
Literally everywhere. Like,
yeah.
All this L200 or whatever this phone is called, I got for free because
From another shop in
the building. They were throwing it out, and I was like, hey, can I have that? And he said, you most certainly can.
Wow.
So that's that.
free material.
Again, this is the main work area. This is where we sculpt, mold, paint, fabricate,
Do stop motion.
now.
That's the Velociraptor start.
And this is the back half to the. This is the back half to the Velociraptor that I'm going to be doing. Guys, hold on. See that? There you go. So you see the size comparison. They were very big animals. And it's not until I get to this point where I'm like, what did I get myself into? But this is going to be a massive sculpture. Both legs are going to be sculpted independently, so I could just mold this half and half. And then the leg will be, I've got to build that up. I've got to do the other leg. But yeah, it'll be as you can see, I modeled this off of my leg. I laid down and traced how big the raptor leg would be around my leg. So my foot is going to be in there like that.
I see.
Kind of like a still. Kind of like a still.
Yep. So I'm going to be like this. As you can see, like if I'm in riding the baticle.
The bat pod.
The bat pod. The baticle was cool too.
Like a bat icicle.
Yeah, so it's not going to be the most comfortable puppet or suit. When I go to these different shows, people are going to have to come to. It's going to be one of the suits where people have to come to me because I won't be able to move around too much in it. I may be able to take a step. If people want to see what the finished product is going to look like, they can go on to the Stan Winston School of Character Arts on YouTube, and they actually have what the original Raptor suits look like for the first Jurassic Park film.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. That is I made that when I was 18. That is the Predalien. It was a full suit. You could actually see it on my YouTube. All of it together. The mandibles moved, the mouth opened and closed. You know, I thought I was hot stuff. I thought I was going to do like a whole film. That's made out of upholstery foam, cardboard, and hot glue, like 1,000 sticks of hot glue. I was 18. Well, when that came out, 2005,
2007.
Yeah, so I was 19 actually, because I was 18 in 2006. So I was 19 when I made that, as well as this Iron Man, this cardboard Iron Man head. My mom sent me relics from the past. This is all cardboard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Some of the first stuff you did.
Some of the first pieces that I made, I still have them. Codename Rebo Stark.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's hard to know when it's time to let things go and when not to. Like, how much nostalgia does it have to have for it to still take up space at your shop? You know.
Well, the funny thing is I didn't know that my mom still had all this stuff until I went back home one day and she had it all like in a closet, and she was like, "Yeah, I was saving this stuff for you, and whenever you're ready to take it, you can take it." Like, she sent me like a bunch of my old artwork, and a couple of pieces like that. She said she still has some other things that I made that are available. So it's just really cool to see them now. My brain, the way it works now, doesn't understand how my younger brain made that. I know what it's made out of. I wouldn't be able to recreate it again with those same materials. I think I have an aneurysm.
Yeah, no, it's funny how that happens. Sometimes you look back at old work and like, wow, I can't believe how did I do that? Especially with those resources that I had. And it's so cool to see your whole shop and your little side studio there. And if people didn't get enough from that, you have to check out his Instagram here. Again, it's like it's almost like being there. There's so many different projects you're always working on and updating from. This seems to be like one of the places where you probably have the most updates. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the one I stay the most current with because it's easy. Instagram has made it easy to post, and it shares it both places. So if I share it on Instagram, it goes to my Facebook.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful, man. So yeah, people definitely make sure you check it out there. Follow it there. That's at Rashaad Santiago. And Rashaad, this was amazing, bud. Thank you so much for being on the show. And stick around for a moment, and we'll let everyone else go. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for stopping by.